Great to be with you. 22 degrees, slowly getting to that top of 34 degrees. So I hope you're staying cool this morning. Well, someone who's always cool, of course, is Neil Hermes, our resident bird guru. Hello, Neil.
Tatjana, what a beautiful introduction, as always. Thank you.
Checks in the mail from you, hopefully. Now, I should point out, if anyone has a question for you, 6255 1206. Oh, have you got the radio on there, Neil? We might have to turn it down. I can hear an echo.
Yes, I'm just sorting that out as we speak.
Fantastic. Now, Mount Gambia Council is seeking a solution to problem corellas. What are these pesky birds doing?
Well, people in Canberra would know corellas. It's the big white. We have big white cockatoos, the ones with the yellow crest. We also have a couple of species of corellas which look quite similar.
Right.
The main common one is the little corella, but amongst them here in Canberra we have a few long-bills as well. They have an orangey throat, but they have a massive bill. And they've only just been coming into Canberra in the last few years, but where they're abundant is on the border of Victoria and South Australia, around Mount Gambia. That's the sort of central ground zero for long-billed corellas. And with these massive bills, they are very destructive, and they're causing all sorts of damage to them for the Mount Gambia Council.
Well, I understand that they're ripping up the turf at the sports park. They're saying the turf is starting to look like a patchwork quilt, and they were saying they had the best facilities in hockey in South Australia, and now they don't, and it's going to cost $10,000 to get it repaired.
Yeah, and when they say turf, Tatjana, what they're meaning is the artificial turf. You know, this really
So
high
why do
quality,
they want that? Yeah.
And the birds, well, they just landing on this stuff and then tearing out great chunks of it. So it's desperately expensive to repair that sort of artificial surface. And they're going to all sorts of measures. They're putting up scarecrows. They're patching the turf. They've got volunteers involved. They're putting out, in one situation, they're putting out pieces of black polythene pipe to look like snakes lying on the ground to try and discourage them. But look, when they're well fed in the district, they a bit like our white cockatoos here in Canberra. When they get bored and they find something they like chewing on, it is very difficult to find a way to distract them. The very expensive solution for the council will be to put netting over the whole of the sports field to keep them out. And that may, in the end, be the only really satisfactory solution they'll be able to find, but they are very destructive.
Well, if anyone listening has something to offer, just call the Mount Gambia Council, I guess. Who knows? Now, what does a bird hear, Neil?
Now, there's a good question, Tatjana. What does a bird hear? Birds have completely different hearing to humans. Mm-hmm. They have different vocal cords. They don't have vocal cords. They have syrinxes, which are completely different to our vocal cords. So they make a different sound altogether. The other thing is they have a completely different ear to us. We have small bones in our ear. They just have a funnel. Mm-hmm. So they hear differently. So what it means is the sounds that they hear are completely different to what we hear. And when we interpret a bird call, sometimes we might mistake what we're hearing for what the bird's actually hearing.
Okay. This is interesting that they find this out, though.
Yeah, well, I've been doing research, particularly on Australian birds, the zebrafinch and the budgie in the last decade or so. There's been a lot of research done on their calls. One of the really fascinating things is that birds can hear sounds down to milliseconds.
Wow.
Milliseconds. And what that means is that they have an ability to differentiate all sorts of extraordinary, subtle, but very fast sounds. I mean, they'd be hopeless watching, a TV or a movie, with 30 frames a second or so. I mean, their sensitivity to speed and to picking up sensory things at very, very small levels is amazing. And what we think this is about is, of course, birds have to react very quickly. You're watching birds, they move fast. They fly through the bush, they're reacting very quickly. And the sounds that they're hearing appear now to be very, very tiny sounds, which and short length sounds, which is more important to them than the melody that we hear.
And I guess it's relevant to ask you now. I've always wanted to know because, of course, you've got some birds that mimic music and sound and even traffic and all sorts of things.
Yeah, and that's all about, we think that's all about a bird, particularly a male, advertising a territory, wanting to have the best call in an area. and they have their own call, their natural call, and then they add other sounds that they hear to try and embellish their sound. This is Tatjana, is something that gets back to the subject that you loved about, boy meets girl and embellishing. I mean, this is the old story, isn't it? So it's the embellishing of the sound to make it more attractive, to make it more appealing, to make it different, to try and attract a mate. So some birds will do that as well. But this information now that we have that birds can hear milliseconds of sound is just amazing.
Yeah, that is incredible. And our last story today is scientists hailing AI as a game changer, tracking down a bird that they thought was lost since the Black Summer bushfires. Yeah,
so the actual study was done on the Easton bristlebird, which is a very uncommon bird found from southern Victoria through the New South Wales coast in heathlands and up to just at the corner of Queensland. It's a bird about the size of an average sort of honey eater, and very, very elusive, but with a strong call, and a call that you can hear. And if you know the call and you're trudging through heathlands, hundreds of kilometres or whatever, you may hear it off in the distance. The difficulty has been, how do we find this bird in these heathlands when all we have is the call? Now, what they've done is put out recorded thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of just background sound from the heathlands, and now they're teaching computers through AI to identify the actual birds, the bristlebird's call, and so using massive amounts of data, they can now extract out the little bits of data they need. I mean, it's substituting for thousands of hours of human hearing or human surveying that can be done very quickly now using AI and computer techniques.
Now, it is a very warm day today, so I guess a reminder for people to maybe put some of those shallow sources out for birds today in their garden.
Yeah, thanks very much for reminding me of that, Tatjana. It's a great opportunity to help the birds in your garden and to get to see them better. But do remember to pop them into any bird water you put out. Put it in a way that cats aren't likely to be able to utilise it as a way of capturing the birds. So somewhere near some small shrubs or something like that is a good idea. But and if you can leave a little sprinkler just running gently and making some dripping sounds, birds will respond to the sound of the water and are more likely to find it if they can hear some dripping sounds. So that's just another little tip for getting the birds, looking after birds on these hot days.
Fantastic, Neil. And are you getting up to some birding despite the warm weather?
I won't be. I'll be birding tomorrow. I've got the project out at Murray Bateman I'm doing tomorrow. But I'd remind all the listeners that I've got my program for this year all out now. I've got the trip to Norfolk Island in November, and I've got the very popular albatross watching trip is now on again. That'll be in September out of Jervis Bay, and of course my regular local 2-hour walks each month at local sites around town. People can find about that on my website.
Fantastic, Neil. Always a pleasure. We'll catch you again soon.
Thanks, Tatjana. Ciao.
Thank you so much. That's Neil Hermes, our regular ornithologist.